Hello everyone, Rare Mod Reviews here, and today we'll be looking at the Master Grade 1 to 100 scale Verka Zeta Gundam. So this is something I got probably a year ago, built a year ago at that, but I always put this thing off. I'm not sure if it was because I didn't have my editing software as the time I built this thing. It's really just the fact that this thing's transformation is also just as bad as just about any other Zeta Gundam out there. I feel like they make these things transformations a lot more complicated than they need to be, and that's what really just kind of muddles the waters. As I don't know, man. Like when I watched the show and even played the games and whatnot, they like showed all this thing transforming. It's like I feel like I could literally sit here and play out how it transforms in my head. But when it comes to these model kits, they always do something that just makes them feel a lot more complicated than they should. It just really messes it up because like the Zeta Gundam had it easily has the coolest transformation out of every single Gundam or any mobile out there, period. Yet, it's just such a pain to do. You don't want to do it. So it's like you're forced to either have it in mobile suit form or just keep it in mobile armor form forever because you just don't want to transform this thing, man. Like, I have a lot of kits that could transform. And again, I can say right now that this thing is. I, it's not at the top of the list, but it's close to the top of the list when it comes to transformations being annoying. Uh, the top of the list is going to be the Delta Plus. There's no way around that. The Delta Plus is annoying, and I should bring that thing out for some size comparisons and what you call it. Just to compare it with mobile armor form at all, because I think it's pretty similar to it. But honestly, I'm not going to, man, because I'm just ashamed of the Delta Plus. I honestly would probably never review that thing just because it's just too bad. Like, if you want to know my opinions of the Delta Gundam, I'm gonna say just don't buy it. I'm sorry. It's a really cool looking kit and well suit and all that, but it's just too many issues with it. Like, it's to the point where I've already broken several things on it just because the fact the transformation is so complicated. You have to keep looking at the manual to even try it. It's like I think I know it, then I don't. Again, it's just fiddling around parts too much, not knowing the transformation properly, and it just breaks. And it's just like like that's why with this thing, I'm gonna have to look at the manual again to transform it. This thing's just way too complicated. There's like unlocking mechanisms and movable parts and whatnot. It's just like even now, this thing after I've transformed, I couldn't quite get it right. You know, it's just something. Just me looking at it, something just feels odd about it. Like it doesn't feel like I transformed it quite right. Like something just looks off about it. But uh, that aside, this thing still does look just amazing. Just going around it, it just looks like a cool. I don't know how else to phrase it. Like it looks very anime accurate. It almost looks like this thing came straight off the screen, but at the same time, it looks very realistic. It has none of those silver details and whatnot that the Double Zeta had. I feel like it's missing out on a few more silver bits than the Double Zeta did, but maybe that's just me. Um, we'll get more to Double Zeta later, but again, I just really like this thing. One thing I can point out though is with this arm here, I don't know what I did wrong. I took this thing apart like 5 times, just looked at the menu, studied it, and for some reason, this one just never could get flushed like this side can. So honestly, I probably should flip these around or something and use this as a shield arm, but I guess it kind of looks, I mean, I don't know. I guess if I did move it around, this side would be out. This side doesn't look as bad as this side. This side, like especially look at there, I don't know. Because this really does bug me. I almost want to just go look at it again one last time to see what did I do wrong that this does not want to get flushed. But anyway, let's just go ahead and look at articulation for this thing. So the tennis hand, it can move. This is for the transformation, of course, but I guess if you wanted to pose this Zeta Gundam to look like that, you can. So of course, you want to be very careful with these pieces here, and you want to also make sure this thing does not fall at all costs. I could already said that I put this thing on my shelf not even a shelf. I have it placed somewhere. One, very flat, and two, with me testing it before I even walk away with this thing to make sure I get it as stable as possible. Because again, this thing, you get it steady up as you can see here, but it doesn't quite feel flush. Like you can see right here, me just moving it, it's like wobbling around a little bit. It's a little tough to get this thing standing flush. So honestly, you're probably better off just putting this thing on an action base. And again, somewhere very flat, preferably like in the center where if it's gonna fall, it's gonna fall over, maybe to the side, just anywhere where it won't fall off of a high surface, like a second, dare I say second story shelf. I don't know how else to phrase it, like you don't want this thing to somehow manage to fall on his head or it's game over for this thing. You'll never be able to transform the V-fin again. Thankfully, there is a backup for this thing I'll show off later, but I haven't used it. I just want to be careful with this one and make sure that, again, I don't have to replace it, period. At least in Japan, you'd be able to replace the parts. They have that thing going, but not in America. You want another transforming V-fin, I guess you're going to have to buy another Zeta. But anywho, going back on with articulation. The head can move slightly side to side. Unfortunately, there's like the transformation gimmick for the head, so it's kind of, it just feels like it's kind of like stuck on here. I don't know really how else to describe it, but also the collar on this thing is kind of high, and then also the, if you can make it out, the back of the head there, like they just have those big old sections there that just really knock into the like I said, rather high collar, so it doesn't really move up. It has pretty good movement down though, and decent movement up. I feel like I'll be able to go more, but again, has this little collar in the back of the head as well. So at least this thing could do some pretty good flying poses. So that is very up to Zeta's alley. So again, this is a definite kit you want to put on an action base, as that's where you really be able to get this thing to shine. As when it comes to grounded poses, this thing is very limited. I haven't had this thing posed on the ground mainly because most of my action bases are already taken. I honestly need to probably get more because I'm getting a lot more kits that need an action base to really shine, and this is definitely one of them. So moving on here, I'm going to jump ahead to the front armor here. They are of course individually separated. See, look at this right here. I can you see the leg unsheathed from one of the spots here, so I can try to put that thing back in, but it doesn't feel like it really locks in or anything like that. But this thing again is very limited on articulation, so this is the bust you're going to get. It does have some movement in the back of the skirt, but not much at all. So I mean, you can kind of get a bit of a back kick here, a very lazy one at that. Comes to splits, it sort of can do a bit of a split. Yeah, for the most part, I'd say it could do it could kind of do a split. It could also split that piece in the leg there again, which just drives me nuts because again, I could not get this thing in here quite flush. Like, I cannot get that locking mechanism to do its thing. But going on with the side armor, as you can see, it can move up. It's on a similar mechanism to the Zeta Gundam. This thing has the luxury of being number 2 to have been created, with the Zeta Gundam being first. Now this more so is for the transformation, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's why this thing can move so much, but again, it is cool that it can move that much, so yeah. I don't think it's supposed to be up that high, I could be wrong. But geez, where else do we go here? There is some movement below the leg here. That's a completely just for movement's sake. I don't believe that has nothing to do with transformation wise. This movement here is for the transformation though. I guess I kind of went over the legs enough. I don't feel like there's anything else I'm really missing with the legs there. The ankle, this slight side-to-side movement is very lackluster. I feel like they could have done a little better here. There's no excuse for the transformation as to why this is all it can move with the legs there. But of course, the foot can fold up for complete transformation purpose. It does have a bit more toe movement though, it feels like. It feels like it wiggles at this point unnecessarily for some reason. I don't know why, but it doesn't really do anything for posing. This little part here at the foot, it can slightly move a little bit. I think that's more so for the transformation though, because I'm not seeing anything it really does with that otherwise. This wiggles, but it doesn't move. And then again, that's more so for the transformation. It can even move at all, I believe. But I believe I'm going on to the lower body, which I didn't even mean to do. But actually, before I forget, because I feel like I always forget these cockpit gimmicks. But as you can see, you can't open a cockpit, and you can see Camille peeking in there. It's just these cockpits are all gray. So even though the white figure is there, you can still barely see the pilot in there. But the arm here, it's on a ball joint, if I'm not mistaken, so it can go 360. It's a bit of movement to it. You can also fold it out pretty far, so that is handy for those grenade launcher poses to be able to do, which I guess I'll kind of show it off now. You can kind of push it down so you can see those grenades in there. I'll go more into that in detail in just a bit, but the arm here, It can go 360. It's just this joint is extremely stiff and it rubs onto this shoulder armor here a lot. So be very careful with this thing. I still haven't quite loosened this thing up, but you can also see again a bit of detail here for the little cables there. I believe the movement there is for the transformation, but voila. The arm movement is decent enough. I feel like I can move a little bit more, but for the most part, it accomplishes what it needs to accomplish in doing so. The shoulder armor has quite a few pieces of movement. I think this is for a transformation. I can't even move so much, but I could be wrong. But as you see, it can move up to the side like that. So not much deep movement here. And again, I feel like a lot of movement in this thing it's not even restricted by the transformation. It's just something went wrong with this thing that they couldn't get the posability to this thing quite right. And it doesn't have as many excuses as a Zeta Gundam, which is at least bigger, bulkier. I just feel like, I don't know, maybe they're a little too safe with not wanting to make this thing too posable to make this thing still pretty stable. But like I said, a lot of these pieces feel very tight. So like it's gonna break if you move it too much tight. So I mean, I don't know what they're trying to go, but I think they're better off just being a little more risky with this thing, make it a posing machine and transform. Like I could give them a break on the waist, because I don't believe it's like zero waist articulation at all. There's like some wiggles really, but I'm not really getting much of an ab crunch out of this thing, you know. Like this is the most it can really do, a little slight wobble side to side, up and down. But this thing can move its arms out slightly to the side, but that is 100% for the transformation, so I can't really count that. It, of course, cannot move it inwards at all for the transformation. I feel like there might have been something they could have done, making this little part here in the arm double jointed to get it to move a little more, but I don't know. Again, that's just me wanting this to be just a, dare I say, Alpha Zeta Gundam, Omega Zeta Gundam maybe, but overall, I say articulation-wise, it's probably on par with the 2.0 from what I've seen. I do not have a 2.0 in my collection, but I probably eventually get like the Zeta C Plus or something like that, which I'm pretty sure uses a lot of stuff from the 2.0 Zeta. So maybe then I'll probably be able to do a proper comparison to say how the Verka stacks with the 2.0. But again, if you're expecting this thing to do some crazy dynamic poses, you're going to be very disappointed. You'll be lucky if you can even pull off most of the poses from the show and whatnot. Like, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Zeta Gundam is famous for doing like a roundhouse kick on double Zeta Gundam. I don't know if he could quite pull that off quite right here. I don't feel like he'd get low enough to really do like a little sweet kick. But, oh boy, the arm popped off. At least it didn't break off. I don't think I ever had that happen. But I think just about the only thing I didn't show off would be the little tail fin on the back, which can move decent bit, enough for you to do all the stuff you'd want to do with this thing. So you can do some nice flying pose with this thing. Ooh, this thing's so long and whatnot. I gotta space back my tripod to show it off. The fins, of course, can flip up. So if you want to pose this thing off like it's in this Super Saiyan-esque looking form in the final episode of Zeta Gundam, you of course can do that. So that is very cool. I always like the way this thing looks when you have those fins up. There's some movable segments on this thing, but again, that's for the transformation, or should I say the landing gear for it, but I don't think there's really anything else to really show. Of course, there's some wiggling for it, but all this movement is more so for the transformation. Like you could slightly, of course, move this for it, but that's for the transformation. There's no reason for you to really do that otherwise. But again, I think that's just about it. I don't believe I missed anything on this guy. I do want to show off just how cool this thing looks like, all the thrusters and whatnot, the bottoms of the feet. This thing's very detailed. Definitely showing its Verka status here to the max. Now, of course, I did not put any of the decals on. That's because the decals for this thing, typical Verka standard or water slide, I really have to just sit down and man up and start putting decals on so I get more experience with it, as I'm horrible with decals. I am not the best when it comes to that. But I believe that's it for this thing. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the accessories and go from there. All right, so for the accessories, this thing has a decent chunk of them. So I guess we'll first start out here with the beam rifle. Now, there's a lot of intricacies to this thing. I will go into those things in detail in just a bit. I can't quite cover them with one hand right now, so I have my camera on my tripod, so it's easier to look at accessories in this manner. We have two deep pink beam sabers here, I call them. So these, of course, are the standard Master Grade 1 to 100 size. We have, of course, two black beam saber handles. Now, there's a lot of debate on whether the beam sabers are black and white. I can confirm that these things are definitely supposed to be black. When I watched over Zeta Gundam, both the movie and the show, they always appear to be black. That even covers Double Zeta Gundam. When he took out the beam sabers, they were black during that as well. So those are the accurate color for them. We're putting that to bed right now. We have two grenade packs here for this thing. So if you didn't want to have the Zeta Gundam with a shield and technically make it not be able to even transform, there you have it. We have two connectors here. I forget which one is which, but I want to say this is for when you transform the Zeta Gundam into Wave Rider form. And then I believe this should be it for its mobile suit form. I will make sure I'm getting these things right, as I have to look at the menu when I transform this thing. I was only transforming this thing about twice. And I want to say that was two and back from mobile suit form and mobile armor form. So yeah, I could definitely say this is going to be a bit of an event transforming this thing. So bear with me here, as I know the transformation process for this thing is going to be a little tedious, hence why I'm only just now transforming this thing. Double Zetas was not nearly as bad. I only had to really go over the transformation front and back a little bit before I reviewed it. There are two V-fins for this thing. The one on it now is the one that's transformable. This one is non-transformative, so that one's really for display purposes. It's also not rubber like they used to with some of the older Master Grades for the antennas. So if you do break it, you at least have this to fall back on, but you'd have to take that off in order to transform it. Either way, it's going to be a chore. So I recommend really just keep the transformation V-fin on and just be very careful with it. So moving on, this is going to be hands for, I believe, for the beam sabers. These are the beam saber holding hands. You can even see a little peg inside there. So this thing does have two sets of hands. Of course, the fists that are on right now. And then these are the, I guess you call them accessory hands. I mean, these are the outstretched hands. I'll probably plug these things on inside this thing. I actually do the accessories, but I'll immediately take them off. So you'll at least see what they're like on it. I guess I could sort of do the articulation for it, because this thing, of course, does have some articulation for the hands a little bit here. Do not believe this part here moves at all. I'll look at it off camera, and then I'll, of course, show off if this does have some sort of transformation thing to it or whatever. But one thing I definitely love about these hands is the fact the top of the thumb here is white. That's just like a nice little detail here. Just a shame they never really did anything like this for any other mobile suits, as it kind of gives a bit of a fingerless glove look to it. But we also have trigger finger hands, and as you can see, there are two of them. So if you want to hold a beam rifle on the right or the left hand, you are able to do so. So that's a Master Grade for you, making sure stuff like that is possible. And then we have the shield here. So the shield is very detailed on the bottom. You see the nice grays, the color separation between the blacks, reds, even some yellow parts in there. I forget whether these are two yellow parts or one long yellow part for the shield. I want to say it's two different. Now there's a bit of movement in the shield. Before I attach it onto the arm, I'll go look at it one more time, as I'm pretty sure you can collapse it. I'm not sure whether that's for the transformation or what, but this is a lot of movable details with your shield as well. Like I said, I'm going to show this on its own, so I'm not going to show the articulation for it. Again, shield is really cool. But lastly, we of course have a pilot figure for Camille here, and 1 to 100 scaling, of course, make it accurately sized with the mobile suit, and a nice little platform on the bottom of it to make sure he can stand up, unlike the original figures they had. But again, that's going to be it for all the accessories here. This is probably the longest I've ever had to go over accessory list, also I want to mention. But now let's look at all these things in action. All right, so as promised, I of course do have the outstretched hands on for this guy. So there isn't any movement with these fingers at all. Unfortunately, I'm like trying to move them, nothing here. So that's a little sad, but I mean, at least they look good. I really like the way these outstretched hands look. They look really cool, and there's a lot of detail with them as well. So they definitely have that going for them. But I guess we'll look at the beam sabers first. So I don't believe you really need to do anything too complicated to beam sabers. Besides, I believe, make sure you have the right one in. I think, okay, I believe this is the right one. So of course, there's a little peg you just put into the hole there in the hands. Simple as. You then grab a beam saber And there you go. You can make that out. That's the little hole that you peg that thing in. Swivel that beam blade in there. And then make sure you align the saber into the peg there. Which I'm trying to do. There we go. And voila. So this thing has to hold in solely by that peg. But when it does, holds in just fine. So you get all your beam saber poses in there just fine. Now, strangely, Zeta Gundam has 2 beam sabers, but never use 2 of them at once. But if you ever did want to do that, you of course can. Now, it of course has a gimmick here to open up this side armor here. And then you'd go ahead and store the blade right on inside. I don't know if you guys will be able to make that out, but there's like kind of these little teeth that you'd slot them into. Actually, I believe they're supposed to go in. Are they supposed to go in like that? I feel like they're supposed to go in like this. Maybe they're supposed to go like that. No, they're supposed to go the other way. Hold on. Oh no, that's right, I'm stupid. No, use the same peg as the whatchamacallits, the hands. There we go, that looks right. Yeah. So there's those teeth. I guess that's just to make sure it's in there, but there we go. Yeah, you peg it on into the top of the side armor like that. And then of course you just slide it on down like so. So next up, we of course will be using the beam rifle. I'll put all that stuff back in later, don't you worry. So first and foremost, as promised, I said I'm going to go ahead and look at this thing in proper detail. So the handle, as you can see, can move. And you can also fold out as well. So the way I had it there was for the mobile armor form. And you also have the E-clip, which I can confirm can be taken off. I don't believe there's any spares for this thing. If there are, I don't know what the heck I did with it, but voila, if you wanted to have it taken off, you can do so. There's also a little piece here. There we go. You can just clip out, and that's going to be for the transformation to peg that thing onto. I believe it's the shield. So, actually, I'm going to probably... Oh, no, not the shield. It's on the back. You know what? For the heck of it, I'm going to show that off right now. So, I don't know. For some reason, you wanted to have the beam rifle stowed somewhere on a suit. Maybe because you wanted to have him, just going full on with the beam saber or something. At least I'm pretty sure this is where the rifle's supposed to go in here. I don't think it quite can go in from this angle though. Yeah, maybe you could. Does it work like that? No. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure you're supposed to put it in there, but it's not. Like I said, it's not going in. So I think you can only put this thing on when it's transformed. I know the high grade you could do that, but yeah, I don't believe you could do that normally. But moving on, the process of putting the beam rifle in the hand, as simple as putting it into the peg right there. And then similar to of course, the beam saber, you'll make sure that peg line's still holding the hand. And then you spin the thumb up, get it flush in there. And this thing, just like the beam saber, it's not going anywhere. So, again, being very careful with that very stiff joint there. You, of course, can get the beam rifle in this guy's hand just fine. Very long beam rifle. It's hard to get this thing in a frame, just how long it is. But unlike the Zeta Gundam, for the most part, it has a lot less troubles holding its beam rifle, I find. You will have to do some filling to get it into a proper pose and all that, but again, it can do so just fine. But next up, we're going to do the grenade packs for this thing. Ooh, I've been having this arm come off like crazy. I'm not sure how I feel about that. But to get that going is as simple as just plugging it on into the arm like so. And I guess that's kind of a good thing this came out, but yeah. It has like a little mechanism where you're supposed to like kind of push the grenades in like that. And as you can see, it helps push off that part there, the arm. And then of course you could just push that right back on in and push that forward again. If this part was a bit more flush, it looked a little better, but that's how that's supposed to look, more or less. So getting the arm back on in there, I gotta make sure I have that pushed in properly. So I've never had that happen. I must have messed something up. But I'm pretty sure I showed the shit off earlier, the articulation for it, but if I didn't, I'm showing off now. So it looks like there's a peg in there. I don't remember if there's something that's supposed to peg onto or not. I'll check that on the bit when I look into the instructions, but again, there's a decent bit of movement in this thing. The shield can move a little bit. I thought it could collapse. It looks like it could push up slightly, up and down. I don't know if you guys could quite make that out, but I remember there being something. I know this is a landing gear, but I swear there's something you could do to collapse this thing a bit more than this. Maybe not. There's a little bit of movement with it, really. But again, this has something to do with the transformation more than anything. But moving on. Oop. You see, that's not supposed to come off. I feel like I played around this thing enough, but getting it onto the Gundam itself is, of course, as simple as, like with the grenade packs, again, just putting it on, really. So, voila. Now, for those of you who are curious, of course, this would be how the articulation for this thing would look on it. So, if you want to have it a little higher up, I guess technically this would be how it should be when it fires off the cables. I'm sure if you guys watch the show, you remember there's the moment in the show where the Zeta Gundam fired off the cables at Hamon's Cubile, and it kind of drew it in and then slashed it. I guess this is what you'd want to do if you were to kind of pull off that pulleys. That way you see the cables in there a bit better. But of course, if you wanted to get this thing a bit of a blocking pose, you'd have to do something a bit more awkward like that. Maybe something a little less awkward, like holding it more so like this. Is again, unfortunately, because there's like not much movement for the arm, though, you're never going to get this thing quite in the pose you probably want to, especially with the shoulder kind of knocking into the fins here a little bit. I guess you maybe move them a little bit more out the way. That'll help the movement a bit more, but this is a very restrictive shield. This shield doesn't feel like you're really supposed to even block with it, especially how thin it is. It's more so just for the transformation. But I'm sure some of you might ask, so if I'm not mistaken, you should be able to flip it around as well. It looks like it more or less works. So if you want to use the shield as more of a striking weapon, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. Also kind of makes it a bit more practical to block with the longer sides this way, I find. But I guess that's really it. I think I've covered all the accessories. I could probably try to sort out whether this thing can get into the action base from one accessory or another. So let me see. If I have troubles with this thing, I'm gonna go cut it out and then just probably show what this thing looks like in the air. I know I'd have to get this part of the leg fleshed out. This thing is like even worse this time around. Like this freaking, there we go. I think what I'm doing wrong is I'm supposed to push up on this a bit more or something. There's something I'm doing wrong that's like, because this one especially doesn't seem locked in. This one's good, but this one here isn't. There we go. Okay, maybe that did it. That pushed in pretty good there. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe putting it on the action base is as simple as, if I can move that part. And you see, if you can make out those kind of teeth right there, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to kind of put it in the grooves with those. There we go. Also, another thing, but if you actually put this standard, I think that would also do a perfect job of making sure this thing is flushed and locked in. So, whatchamacallit, you don't have any issues with this thing falling apart on you, whatever. But there we go. I believe this is Action Base 5 or maybe 4, whichever one's the high grade version. But as you can see, even though this thing is not made for a 1 to 100 kit, it still does do a good enough job of getting this guy airborne. So you can actually have it pulling off some cool poses in the air as intended. So, of course, this thing just looks amazing in the air, just shooting at some Titans here. I'm gonna actually move that fin because that's kind of killing me. There we go. So that looks a lot better. But as you can see, this guy's just really in his element when he's in the air. You see the stickers off. I actually didn't mention earlier. 2 stickers below and above the barrels here. Of course, we have one for the main camera there, the mono eyes there. Eyes there, and there's another one right there, the back of the head, of course. I believe that one's blue. So, again, very phenomenal looking kit here. But what really makes or breaks this thing is going to be the transformation. So we're going to go ahead and look at that. And oh boy, this is going to be a doozy. So I don't know if I should be telling you guys to strap in or if I should be telling myself to strap in. But either way, let's go ahead and get on into it. Right. So let's go ahead and get to the size comparisons here. So I'm not going to go too crazy with these things. Obviously, I'm going to be showing this thing up next to the Zeta Gundam here. And geesh, in hindsight, I actually should have gotten a double Zeta. I have that thing transform. You know what? I could probably honestly untransform it. I want to show these things off first, though. Jeez, it's actually see that since I kind of want to show just the double Zeta transform, though. I'm gonna just show the double Zeta off with the Zeta Gundam transform. I could probably put it into Fortress mode too with it. I'm gonna try to show the double Zeta off with another master grade. I'll think of something to compare it to. There's a lot of accessory packs for the F90 I got to put together and get on with it. So I'll probably try to size comparison with that just for the sake of doing so. So I'll try to remind myself to do so later with that. I should be doing accessories for that soon enough anyway. But moving on, 'cause now I'm just rambling here. I'm actually going to go ahead and throw something weird in here. So the Zeta Gundam being taller than the Mark II is not surprising, as Zeta Gundam was the series that started the thing where mobile suits just started to get extremely big for like no reason at all. So it makes sense that the Zeta Gundam started that off with the dare I say the good guy suits, whereas the bad guy suits again quickly started to get bigger and bigger. So again, this is a 1 to 144 scale high grade, the Psycho Gundam. And as you can see, it is still bigger than the master grade, which again I love, because let's be honest, we're never going to see a master grade of any sort of mobile armor like the Psycho Gundam here. So at least having a high grade still tower over a master grade, that's good enough for me. As now I can pose these 2 off, or 3 off rather, together. And although of course Psycho is supposed to be even bigger than this, again, it still doesn't look too out of place next to these things, which is fine by me. So I guess now this is the point where I sit here and figure out how in the world I'm going to transform this thing. I'm not sure if I'll be able to transform this guy without referencing the menu. So this is going to be a bit of a doozy, and I can already tell you guys I separated this thing into multiple parts for a reason, because again, there's just a lot of planning that goes into these reviews. And again, even as I'm recording this, I'm still sitting here tapping my foot, wondering how in the heck I'm going to do this. So hopefully by the end of this video, I can pull the transformation off and I don't look like a donkey doing so. So let's strap in for the last part of this review here.